Ready? Sorry, had the wrong side. I hit the cotton side. Morning, let's call this meeting to order and let us have a pledge to the flag. Would, roll call. I'm sorry, roll call. So every place does it different. Let's do the roll call. I'm sorry.
Ms. Carano. Mr. Kerrigan. Ms. Cooney. Mr. Curtis. Here. Mr. Dortch. Here. Mr. Finland. Here. Mr. Flynn. Mr. Hall. Here. Mr. Hawkins. Here. Mr. Humke.
Here.
Mr. Sullivan. Ms. Weber. Ms. Zadra. Here.
Thank you. I believe that shows that a quorum is present. Let us now do a pledge to the flag. Mr. Dortch, would you lead us in that pledge? Sir. Thank you very much. Let us go to approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments? Anybody want to take anything out of order?
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion, a second motion, Dortch, second by Councilwoman Zadra. Any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. May we go to initial public comment? Madam Secretary, do you have any cards? Is there any person wishing to give public comment who has not filled out a card? Thank you. We will close initial public comment. Item 5, review approval of the minutes, 2 sets of minutes. Are there any changes desired? Any amendments, deletions?
Move to approve.
There's a motion by Ms. Cooney and a second by Councilwoman Zadra. Is there any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Updates and reports. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got a busy agenda today, so I'll be brief, but some exciting and positive news once again this month in our President's report. Julie Greer has joined us as National Sales Manager, we told you last meeting, and subsequent to that, Jennifer Bumbleau is now on board as our new National Convention Sales Manager out of Washington, D.C. She's actually here in town, finishing up 2 weeks of orientation, which have gone extremely well. We're delighted to have these ladies on board. These are really A-plus grade, heavy hitter national sales managers that really are going to do a great job for us and have already started generating leads based on the relationships they have in the marketplace. Ms. Bumbleau joins our DC-based team. She's in DC, joining Allison Farr, who's been on board for a while. And then, of course, they work here locally with Robin Nichols, who's based in the Reno area. But those 3 ladies comprise our East Coast team with a heavy emphasis on the Washington, D.C. National Trade and Professional Association market. And we have very high hopes for what's going to come out of this dynamic trio working together. It's been off to a good start, and having Jennifer on board completes the process for us. The RSCVA team, beyond these 2 new hires, has had a lot of booking activity recently. 40,000 room nights of new definites confirmed verbally and in writing for March. We're a little over 20,000 definite room nights signed now. We should have a comparable number in April. We do have to take the Safari Club International cancellation at some point in the near future, so unfortunately that's going to offset some of those positive gains, but such is the world of the convention industry. But forward progress, and it's good to see that the sales team has been on board now for a year plus, is starting to gain traction and get the closing that we've all been looking forward to. This is also part of the marketing campaign and our bigger trade show presence out there as well. But it's all coming together, and the numbers are proving that out. We also hired an assistant sales manager to fill a slot that opened up, so we are fully staffed in the sales department and ready to go, and everyone's really pumped about it. We're 35% ahead of where we were last year in terms of the tentative pipeline. It's 406,000 tentative room nights there. Our eventual goal, now that we're fully staffed and have some of these heavy hitters joining us, is to get up to 1 million room nights of tentative business on an ongoing basis going forward. So that'll constantly be cycling, converting to definite business, dropping off to replaced by new leads. Our lead volume is up dramatically as well on a monthly basis. So things are all moving in the right direction. Pricing continues to be a hot topic, but we're finishing up a fantastic first quarter, and that first quarter also does show some rate growth. In March, we were up over almost $7 in average rate year over year, and as I showed in our little chart here, as I've been discussing with our hotel CEOs and GMs, a small rate increase from the 9 largest properties can provide substantial new revenues to the RSCVA. And if you look at this, a $5 average rate increase from the biggest properties brings in over $1 million in new RSCVA collections to this organization. And heaven knows, with our capital challenges and our desire to do even more marketing in multiple markets, that money could be very well spent. So the fact that we were almost $7 up in average rate in March and the sky didn't fall down shows that we can sustain higher rates here. And even with a higher rate in this marketplace, we are still an excellent value compared to the competition. In travel trends and developments, there's some more information that supports that. Benchmark Hotels and Resorts did a top 10 meeting trends, and about 5 of them I thought were especially relevant, but rates are on the rise nationwide. The feeling is that meeting planners are still have the upper hand for a little while, but they're losing ground, and a large majority of them in a recent MPI study show that they believe that the tides are turning and that the hotel and convention center and convention bureau world will soon have the upper hand when it comes to pricing because demand is increasing and supply is so stagnant nationwide. Pace is promising. So our pace is picking up, but pace is picking up nationwide. People are getting off their hands and starting to book more meetings business of all sizes, and that bodes well for us. We don't want to be bucking a trend. We want to be riding that trend. Healthy culinary continues. This is something our friends who do our catering need to be aware of. Healthy, gluten-free, sustainable cuisine, local produce, etc., is a hot trend. We need to make sure that our menus reflect that with our friends at Levy. Team building is back. After years of survival, now people are saying, well, gee, I guess we need to take our employees and tell them we love them again, and let's do something fun and interesting that makes them feel more connected to each other. And it's interesting to note that the old ropes and obstacle courses that were so popular back in the 90s, and some of you may have participated in back then, have been replaced by new events. Scavenger hunts, I've seen those myself at a number of conferences, early morning group fitness runs, competitive bowling. We're pretty well capable of doing that. We've started telling groups that, you know, one of the options you have here you don't have elsewhere is you can do a great big bowling competition in one of our facilities, and we can make that easily available to you, and you don't have to, you know, schedule and stagger people because of limitations of lanes, and there's some traction on that. And culinary cook-offs. We actually were at the Hyatt Regency Lake Tahoe recently with a group that came in of meeting planners from around the country. It was done in conjunction with Meetings and Conventions Magazine and a management company. And the evening I was there, they brought us in. We didn't know what we were going to do, but there was no regular banquet seating for the dinner, and there were stations, and we were all given ingredients and put on teams, and we had to prepare a stew or soup from a resort cookbook and then be judged on it. So I'm not a real culinary guy, and I was sort of saying, oh boy, but it was actually a lot of fun. It was a great environment. People were drinking wine and beer and checking on each other's stews and seeing what people were putting in them, and it really turned out to be a very fun evening. And that's typical now of some of the creativity that's replacing a sit-down rounds of 10 kind of dinner for groups when they get together. So once again, we need to be aware of these trends to make sure that people who come in, who hold meetings nationally, are finding those same types of options available here in Reno, Sparks, and North Lake Tahoe. Business segments that are specifically heating up: education, especially in the engineering and technology areas, medical, biotech, high-tech, new media, association, not-for-profits, and financial services. And then the incentive market is starting to pick up again. People are starting to say our best customers and our best employees need to be incented with a trip or awards of merchandise now, programs that were very popular for a long time and got kind of put on the back burner during the tough economic times we've been facing. So it's kind of interesting to see that things are starting to be more positive in the meetings industry, and that we're seeing those same trends here locally in our numbers and our volume of inquiries. One of the biggest things that came out recently in the social world, social networking world, is Coca-Cola's announcement that with 61.5 million Facebook friends, they can find no correlation between that and their bottom line sales. Well, this caused a lot of ripples in the industry because you can imagine people who have 50,000 Facebook friends trying to figure out what it did for them. If Coke can't do it with almost 62 million people, it does raise a question of what is the value. Now, they were quick to say that their online advertising works as well as their TV advertising these days. Okay. They are a soft drink, a fairly simple marketing proposition, and that they do believe that social media marketing is, quote, crucial for reach, engagement, love, and value. So kind of soft explanation. They're not pulling back on it, but it was really the biggest company so far who's come out and said, you know, we don't see a correlation between selling more product and building up all these relationships. Everyone agrees it's not bad to have people who love you, just people can't really monetize it, even when they're General Motors, who also had a similar finding about a year and a half ago, and Coca-Cola, pretty big guys in the Fortune 500. A recent Gartner survey found that corporate websites actually beat out social networks as a more successful digital method. A lot of people said, oh, you know, websites are passé, it's all in Facebook and Twitter. Not true. And we find that the investment we've made in a very active and constantly evolving website has served us very well. As a matter of fact, this is kind of a startling number. Year to date, we've had 1,107,744 unique visitors to visit RenoTahoe.com. TravelNevada.com, the state website representing Las Vegas, Reno, and every place else, has 838,207. So we are dramatically beating the state website in terms of visitors. And the other thing that's interesting is we're 110,000 plus every single month, and we go way up beyond there. The state website is as low as 70,000, and it goes up to 130,000 at one point. It's very inconsistent. So we've got 100,000 plus every single month coming to us, and then it peaks as the season changes, whereas the state website is all over the board in terms of their visitation. So it'll be interesting to see if the state website picks up in the future. They had a terrible launch of the brand, unfortunately. I say that as a travel commissioner. I'm very upset about the way the website was launched. We had that big press conference in Carson City, and the website was not working properly on the day of that. The mobile application was supposed to be up and running the next day. It was not up and running for 2 weeks. They had to take down the website. It's been a bit of a disaster. So they're off to a rough start with that. And the irony is that that was one of the areas that Burson Marsteller was supposed to be especially proficient in and putting a lot of the emphasis on, and it was a total failure. So as I say, not happy about that, not gloating, but our website continues to be an excellent performer, and we're looking at ways to use it as a platform for other messaging going forward. So there are other organizations we work with we think would benefit from being more closely tied to VisitRenoTahoe.com because we do attract so many eyeballs. And there are a lot of folks with smaller websites that would have a positive business impact if they worked more closely with us. So we're exploring those options. On the operations side, congratulations to our team for getting our OSHA penalties from almost $30,000 down to $14,000. Still, you don't want to pay anything, but we all know that OSHA visits can be difficult, and they almost never leave without finding a lot of things wrong, no matter how careful you are about your operations. There's also some conflicting data in the laws locally and federally, and it's awfully tough to meet everybody's requirements when they come in with a sharp pencil and a clipboard. But a significant reduction in the expenses, and ultimately, I'm sure that there were some things that they found that were oversights that will make our environment safer for our visitors and our employees as well. I think many of you have been over to see the 44 lanes that were built in Hall 5 of the Reno Sparks Convention Center. They look fantastic. If you haven't, we'd be happy to take you over there, or you can visit yourself. It is open. It's like recreating the National Bowling Stadium in the convention center in that hall. It really is a terrific experience. I've been walking through there from time to time, and people are upbeat and really seem to be enjoying the environment, and that's an awful lot of bowling to have in town at once, but we're seeing the benefits from that. It surely is a big factor in our great performance during this calendar year to date. And then I just spent a significant portion of yesterday with the folks from Barrett-Jackson and the Speed Channel. And once again, Speed Channel becomes Fox Sports 1 the month after, or actually about 2 weeks after their event here this August. So that's already been announced, and this will be really the last major event under the Speed name until before Fox changes all the logos and everything becomes Fox Sports 1. But had terrific tour with them. One of the exciting things about Barrett-Jackson, and I know I talk about this a lot, but this is a big deal. When they go to West Palm Beach or they go to Scottsdale, or in the past they've gone, well, in Vegas and Mandalay Bay, or in the past in Orange County, they're very much focused on the venue because that's where the action is, that's where the auction is, that's where their sponsors are. What's different about them coming here is that there are multiple venues because during Hot August nights, as we all know, there's action all over town. So we went out with the Speed crew and went to multiple venues where they're going to have camera setups. So unlike the other 3 locations they go to, they're going to have live footage shot from the Grand Sierra with a gigantic boom camera that can go up overhead, zoom in on downtown skyline, zoom in over at the Atlantis, and next to the convention center where the auction is taking place. They're going to have cameras at the drag racing going on at John Esquaga's Nugget. And it looks like Ford is going to be the sponsor of that drag racing. So Ford and GM are the 2 big sponsors. You want Ford and GM to be sponsoring an element because that brings in the professional teams from around the country to make sure their brand is well represented. They're going to have a camera right downtown by the Reno Arch showing the fireworks display and the cruising going on there. So unlike these other destinations where it's very much focused on we're selling cars here and car stuff here, this is going to be very much focused on, this is a community where all sorts of cool stuff is going on for car people. We're going to get a lot more exposure. And I was able, Richard Miner is the Senior Vice President of Production for Speed. He's the guy. Everybody reports to him. He's a very powerful individual at Speed and now Fox Sports. And he and I were talking while I was here as continuation of a conversation we've had. But on Tuesday of that week, he and I are going to go out, probably with our Willys promotional vehicle, and we're going to shoot multiple segments around Reno Sparks that will then be shown during the broadcast. That'll basically be what we want to promote about our region. We'll have B-roll of some of the events that aren't taking place, high-definition B-roll, but we'll also have footage that is shot that week with one of their on-air personalities talking about the National Automobile Museum, talking about some of the private collections we have here, talking about the car culture here, and really building up a lot of support for this environment that goes beyond just selling cars in the convention center. So very exciting stuff. They will be here frequently now. They had a very large team in this week. Some of them are still here. They'll be back the first week of May. They want to sit down with us and start talking all the signage issues. There will be humongous corporate signage throughout the convention center facility, indoors and outdoors. The folks from General Motors were here this week. They're actually talking now about the possibility of perhaps having some Corvettes driving at speed on a controlled course in downtown Reno, in addition to what they're going to be doing over at the Grand Sierra with their hot laps with professional drivers. Ford and perhaps Chrysler will be doing that probably over in this part of town. So they're going to break up Ford and GM. In the past, it's been side by side, but they're getting so big that it's hard to accommodate. So very exciting stuff. We'll be seeing them over and over again in the coming months as this thing gears up. There's a lot of moving parts that need to be addressed. And that is my President's report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very thorough report. Are there any questions of the President?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Chris, I had the opportunity to actually visit momentarily, as did Commissioner Weber, in Washington, D.C. with our representative back there for some business that we were back doing for the region,
Right.
Involving economic development in transportation and tourism. And just want to say that she was quite a resource. She
Were you with Allie
participated-
on that trip? Yes.
She participated quite, fervently in the discussions, and so
Wonderful.
kudos there.
What I'd heard that you were back there, and thank you for your support. That's very impressive when we can put a team like that together, and it does make a difference.
Yeah, so I know that we'll be doing more with her, and we shared some of the things that we have done at this level with the new chairman for the House tourism side through Commerce, and they're looking to get a lot more information from us, so we've coordinated, with her to provide that information. So they were very excited to hear what we might be able to assist them with. Then I was hearing in a discussion at an event about a sponsorship that we have with one of our racing, so I'm guessing that it's the piece that we were just talking about. And the sponsorship is actually from one of the brothels. And I'm curious how we can have taken a position in public against brothel advertising in public, that being the airport and taxi cabs, yet accept a sponsorship. Can you talk to me about
Well, I think
different presentations, public presentations and attitudes, and how we can accept one and criticize another?
Well, the Virginia City Grand Prix, I think, is the event in question, which is an event that's listed as one of our Northern Nevada Motor Madness events in the destination. What the sponsors of an individual event negotiate in terms of their, if you look at the sponsors list for that event, which we don't have any hands-on involvement with, it is a long, long list. There probably are 30 or 40 sponsors on there. I frankly saw the list the other day. I didn't see anything about that, but I guess I'm not aware of all the names of the brothels. But I saw that in the article that was recently in the RGJ. That was news to me. But all we're doing is, that is an event that is one of many that takes place in the motorsports arena around here. We're not personally putting on any of the events other than our involvement with Barrett-Jackson. So this is a consortium of events that are cross-marketing each other. The individual sponsorships for the air races, for Hot August Nights, for the Grand Prix in Virginia City are all left up to those individual organizations involved. So we're not endorsing it. All we're doing is cross-promoting, or starting a cross-promotion. It's not really something that we own. It's something we've launched for the destination in general.
I think we need to be very cautious not to be speaking out of both sides of our mouth. If we're going to criticize that element for one and participate at another level, there needs to be some serious consideration given to that and rationale explained. So.
Okay. It's a Story County event, and we do have a couple of events that are outside of Washoe, but that we feel has a direct connection with our hotel community here in terms of where people stay. I can certainly talk to Denny Dotson up in Virginia City and let him know going forward that we would appreciate them not accepting that type of sponsor. We don't have the leverage to do that other than our professional courtesy with each other, but I think, I was surprised when I read about it. As I say, I've never seen it in the listing anywhere.
Thank you.
Just for real quick,
Councilman George.
from my standpoint, I don't think we want to go out and tell event promoters who they can accept as sponsors and who they can't. I'm not supportive of that.
But I think we need to be cautious of, if we're going to participate in
Councilman
events
Sadler.
that have that type of sponsorship, then we need to be far more cautious and moderated in criticisms or support positions that we take in another sponsor's advertising. If we're going to criticize one for showing men's clubs and those kinds of activities, yet support another one who does, we need to have a much more moderate approach.
Councilman George.
Yeah, from my standpoint, we're promoting an event that's in this region. Who they get as their sponsors is their business. It's not
No
ours.
argument. Yeah, understand.
I don't want to be critical of them.
But we have, the CEO has actually expressed criticism of other partners who have advertising from those people. What makes it okay for one sponsor partner to have advertising from them or support from them and another one not to?
Okay, I haven't been asked that question, or have I stated, obviously I'm not in favor of it, but I've never been asked that question or made a statement on that. I think probably the middle ground here is, we work closely with Denny and know him well. Just to say, hey, it'd really be nice if you guys, were a little bit more cautious about the kind of sponsors you accept.
I just don't think it's our position to do that. I really don't.
Again, my point is, we've accepted a partnership with somebody who endorses that kind of advertising, and yet you criticize the airport or cab tops, I believe they told me it was the airport, for having that kind of advertising in the airport. So you criticize one partner and you participate with another partner happily. That concerns me.
Well, I have never made a statement on the airport signage relative to men's clubs, but,
Someone that was at an event that I was at explained to me that they had heard you say that, so.
All right,
that-
all
That
right.
may have,
Let's cease fire.
yeah.
We're in the area of marketing. If you got a marketing committee agenda, place it on that agenda of that committee. Hey, how does that sound? This is not agendized. That's President gave a report, and we're seeking to accept it. All right? Okay? Got to give the public notice of what we're talking about. Anything else as to the President's report? Mr. Hawkins?
No, I move to approve the report.
All right. There's a motion and a second to accept the report. Is there any discussion of that motion? Not trying to cut off all discussion, just discussion about the President's report. Seeing no further discussion on that motion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Now we would go to, there's a refinement here. Looks like we're seeking to go to an actual bona fide consent agenda as to items D and E, Delta and Echo.
There is a item for the airport director.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was all, I skipped over that. Long agenda. The sub-point, President's report has two sub-topics. Reno Tahoe Airport Authority presentation. I apologize. I'm sort of used to the President's report all being encapsulated. I apologize, ma'am. Ms. Chris Bart of the Reno Tahoe.
We've invited our friends from the Airport Authority to give us an update. Some of us have seen this presentation, found it very beneficial. Jerry Hall was instrumental in this happening, and we think that all of you would benefit from seeing these numbers and statistics from our friends at the Airport Authority.
Thank you. Good morning. Chris Bart, President and CEO of the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning and to share with you the status of the airline industry and how it is impacting our region and certainly some of your efforts. So I'd like to just start out by sharing with you some of the things that are going on in the industry. I don't know how much you read about what is going on with the airlines. I certainly am in touch with this on a daily basis and challenging it. But recently we were at a conference where Randy Babbitt, who's the former head of the FAA, is now a vice president in the Southwest Airlines organization. And he said these things, and he said that over the last 3 years, short-haul traffic is down 46%. Now, what falls into short-haul traffic? Those are the markets like San Jose and Oakland. And today, we see fewer passengers than in the year 2000, but he didn't say that's because we see fewer seats than in the year 2000. And regional carriers account for about 50% of the business. And where the airlines are now focusing their attention is really the long haul and the international markets. And why are they doing that? They are obviously changing their business approach. They have significantly reduced capacity. They are much more disciplined looking at the return on investment. There is now very much less competition in the industry, and we'll share that with you. And less competition actually creates more stability for the carriers. This year, United Airlines and Delta, by way of example, are requiring their team to focus on a 10% ROI. Southwest, our leading carrier, is requiring their team to focus on a 15% ROI. That's huge. That's nothing that we've ever seen in the industry, and that's the new Southwest. You may have noticed that customer service and relationships have truly fallen by the wayside. At the airport, we continue to pick up more and more and more of the responsibility that used to be the airlines because they don't staff the ticket counters, they aren't there to respond, and so we typically have been picking up that slack. In fact, we have at the airport, among every member of the management team, we have a requirement that you go through what we call walk-around training. And every time we have a major convention in town that's departing and is trying to get out of town, we put our manager's walk-around team out there to help move people through the terminal. That walk-around team was in place when the new checkpoint opened to continue to help folks understand the new processes. And anytime we have a glitch, we have, a big snowstorm or any kind of an impact on air service, the walk-around team, which is all about managers at the airport, goes out there. And of course, what we're all seeing is continued focus on technology. And you're going to see more of that everywhere we go. I think it's important to understand why the airlines came to this position, what is really going on. If you look at the airline industry from 2001 to 2010, they lost $62 billion. $62 billion, that is huge. And then in 2011, when they started changing their method, they're starting to come out of the deep economic downturn, and they actually made money for the first time in a decade, and they made $0.6 billion. Then the following year, up to the third quarter, they obviously didn't make as much money because they only made $0.3 billion. But how does that translate into something we can understand? In those years of great loss, 2001 to 2010, they lost money on every single passenger that got on that airplane. Actually, $9.22 was what they lost per passenger. If you were running a business, as the airlines are, you immediately had to do something to change that trend. And that's where you see the change in 2011. Notwithstanding the ironic up and down of fuel costs, you see all these other changes, the cut in routes, the reduction of fleets and fleet size, the changing of the route structure, whatever they could do. So by 2011, they made 77 cents for every customer that flew. And by third quarter of 2012, they were only making 50 cents for every customer. Now, these are not our numbers. These are DOT numbers, I want you to know, straight from the DOT. So then, what else has changed? Short-haul traffic. This is the Oakland. This is the San Jose that people in the community continue to ask about. What has happened? And this is on the national basis. Yeah, those flights between 0 and 250 miles have decreased by, I have to read this, 62%. And those, and I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing. You know, this is what happens when you get close to retirement. Those flights, they actually lost money, $62 billion on those flights. And in 2011, they, here, I'm on the wrong slide. I apologize again. So what happened with the short-haul traffic in the last few years? 0 to 250 miles went down 46.5%. That's your Oakland and San Jose. 250 to 500 miles went down 18%. 500 to 750 pretty much stayed the same. 750 plus miles went up 15%. And that 750 is really what we're talking about, the long haul, and even more important than that, the international market. So these numbers that you've seen, the decrease in the short haul traffic is dramatic. We are one of the communities that has been impacted, as well as most communities our size. We can probably say the same thing. In fact, we know they can. When we go to market to the airlines, we have a significant disadvantage. The airlines look at your community and they look at the total population in the community. This is not Los Angeles with 7 or 8 million people in their catchment area. This is not the Bay Area with 3 million people in the San Jose catchment area. This is a community with less than 600,000 people in the metro area. So what we do to help our case, we take a look at a bigger catchment area. And this is factual. We do know that we draw people from all over Lake Tahoe. That is our prime marketing asset. And we know that we're into Auburn and Susanville and all these places, and we go with charts and show them how easy it is to get to this airport versus Sacramento or any other airport. But the one thing that does that piques everybody's interest right away is it changes that number from 600,000 to 1.3 million. And when you're talking to an airline about 1.3 million people in a catchment area, they will start to listen. This is our route map today. And as you can see, we really do have great service for a community that has less than 600,000 people. We have service. These are our nonstop markets. These are nonstop markets, obviously, and mostly to major hubs. But we do reach clear into the Midwest, and in both north through the Chicago area and south through the Dallas and the Houston area. Now, while we can say we have 16 destinations, and if we compare that currently to other markets our size, you'll see that those 16 destinations bring us 6,155 seats as compared to all other communities our size who can't come near that. Now, the average seat size for most markets is 60 seats. The average seat size, number of seats in an aircraft in the Reno market is 115 seats, obviously driven by Southwest. But the good thing is, as you look at this chart, you'll see that all these other cities that are vying for air service, that are vying for convention business, etc., that are similar in size, cannot compare to what we have. And if you looked at each one of their route maps, you would see that most of their service is regional. It is not to hubs. Now, what else has happened in the airline industry that's dramatically changed? This has happened in the time that literally I've been running the airport. We started with all these carriers in the United States, which provided all this competition. And you could go to these carriers and you could really have a good case, and you had a very good chance of bringing them in. Well, now American Airlines has gobbled up these. United, has these. Delta, and Southwest. Even Southwest, the carrier that was so different from all the others, but purchased 2 carriers. So what we have now is an oligopoly of 4 major carriers. And what does that mean? That means that competition is even stiffer, which is why they're driving to the bottom line, why they're looking at an ROI with a minimum of 10%, and why it's harder to get service into this market, because every other community in this country is looking at those same airlines. So what else do we have? And this is the most important part of selling Reno. I hear you can't get, one of the complaints that came out was, oh, you can't get international service. Well, guess what? We have every alliance that exists in the United States. We have Star Alliance. We have One World Alliance. We have SkyTeam. And all of these airlines are members of that alliance. So you can take an airline from one of those alliances that flies out of this airport, you can go to their hub airport, and you can connect on any one of these carriers to get anywhere in the world that you need. Now, I fly all the time, just like Chris does, and I will tell you that this is the way travel is today when you're coming to a market our size. You are going to connect at a hub if you're coming from anywhere, a bigger city, unless you're coming, of course, from the hub city. Now, another rumor that goes around is that we are so expensive to fly in and out of. Our rates are so high. Okay, these, again, are DOT statistics. These are not airport statistics, and these are statistics from the third quarter of 2012. So what we see here is medium hubs, average domestic round-trip fare, third quarter 2012 versus third quarter 2011. Look at Reno. Reno actually dropped in cost. Reno is ranked 76th in cost out of the top 100 airports in the country. 76. Now, we're the 62nd busiest airport in the country, and our fares rank 76. So when you hear that it is hard to get here, and when you hear that fares are too high, I will challenge that with real hard data that comes out of the U.S. Department of Transportation, because we know that is simply not the case. Now let's look at another trend. Load factors. I still hear, gee, I wish Reno Air was here. And that would have been nice, but when Reno Air was here, the load factors averaged in the mid-40s. And if you have a load factor in the mid-40s today, that airline is losing a significant amount of money. In fact, what we're looking at is load factors in the high 80s and low 90s. That's what Southwest and all the major carriers are looking for. This is the load factor for Reno, year ending July 2012. So that was last December. Again, these are DOT data information. This is not our information. And all the statistics, by the way, that we do use when we put a business case together, it is not our statistics that we generate. So we go into an airline with credible statistics. But look at this. Look at the bottom end. Look at those load factors. Southwest, 55%. Oakland, 57%. Salt Lake City, 59%. Now, why did Southwest drop those? Southwest is losing a tremendous, tremendous amount of money. On the other hand, look at LAX. The Los Angeles Basin, it has a constrained market. It's a market that we have been focusing on for years for more service from a variety of carriers. But you can see when you're hitting a sustained demand of 87%, that's a constrained market. We will continue to focus on those constrained markets. So Dallas is still a constrained market. LAX, the area, Southern California area is a constrained market. And even the Washington, D.C. area, that is a constrained market. But here, we have no demand. Why don't we have demand? You know, we had 6 flights to San Jose at one time. And little by little, those flights started coming down. This didn't happen in the last year. This happened in the last 3 years. And we would say to the community and the RSCVA, please help us. Don't advertise to the drive market. That didn't happen. And this is the result of that. It's a fulfilled prophecy. And so, you know, the way we advertise and where we advertise is important. And we've got to create demand, and we've got to fill those seats. Now, look what happens this year. We were up first quarter 2.7% in passengers because the demand was there. We had fabulous ski. January, fabulous. We had safari. We have bowlers. Everybody in the community and the region that fills these seats worked to create the demand, and this is what happens. Now, we can go back to an airline, and in fact, next week, Chris Baum and I are meeting with Southwest. These are the numbers we're going to show them to dispute their feeling that the market continues to go down. No, the market is going up when we create demand. So as Chris continues to bring these conventions in here, and we can show the carriers that we have sustained demand, not demand for 1 week, but sustained demand, this will continue, because that is representative of sustained demand. So what does our carrier mix look like, and who's the percentage highest? Obviously, it's Southwest. Southwest, you know, is not part of any alliance. Southwest does not work with travel agents. So if you have a convention coming to town, you have to say, Southwest is over 50% of our market. In fact, it's 59% at the moment. And remind them that to get here on a Southwest flight from anywhere in the country, East Coast, West Coast, you really need to go to the Southwest website to book, because they don't work with travel agents. Now, those other carriers, SkyTeam, Delta, 7%, Alaska, 6%, Oneworld, American Airlines, 10%, and Star Alliance, which is United and U.S. Airways, 18%. So here's another issue that is an issue for conventions. It's that big green Southwest percentage. So I think it's really, really important that we understand how each of these carriers market to your conventioneers and help your conventioneers understand what it takes to get here from those various markets who are represented by those carriers. Now, you need to know that we never stop. Just like the RSCVA never stops marketing for conventions and FIT, we never stop marketing either. And in fact, so far, we've had 22 one-on-one meetings with carriers, as I stand here today, I have staff in Chicago meeting with United. And these are the carriers that so far we've met with. And we continue to go back to Air Canada because we know we have a Canadian market. And I have to shout out a big thank you to some of the properties here, led by the Tri Properties, Rick Murdoch and the El Dorado and the Peppermill and Harrah's. I really have to do a big shout out because the Bellingham service was started because of their efforts. So for the first time in a long, long time, we're going to see service right to the tip of the United States, which really draws all the Canadian service, which is going to come here and fill those rooms. And that is because the community has come together to help with that. And I really do, again, have to give a shout out to those properties. Now, as we go to these carriers, what do we focus on? We focus on, again, the most impacted markets. LA Basin. Those are all airports in the LA Basin. So the first two slides are LA Basin. Washington, D.C., New York. You know, you keep hearing about them. Now, let's take New York, for example. We know we have 102 passengers each way, each day, without stimulation. These are hard numbers. We could say, if we had nonstop into the New York market, we'd probably see a 20% stimulation. So what does that get us? That gets us a 737. Okay, here's another problem. Can a 737 fly nonstop from Reno, Tahoe to New York? No. So, okay, then you go to a carrier that has the equipment that can fly that, and that equipment that can fly then has more seats than we can fill. So this is kind of the chicken and the egg that we're facing. It has so many variables, and one of them is the equipment. So as we're looking at all of these markets, we also need to know what equipment the carrier flies that can reach those markets. Now, when it comes to Southern California, we are working with JetBlue, we're working with Virgin America, we're working with Southwest, we're working with Alaska, and we continue to go to them with those numbers because right now the airport that we have the highest demand for is Orange County. So here's another issue that comes up in our air service effort. Orange County has slot controls. You cannot just go in there with a flight. You have to own a slot to get into Orange County. And so if a carrier has a slot or they have all their slots filled, they cannot add a flight in there until they acquire another slot, and those are auctioned off each year. And that is legislated. Those slots are legislated. We don't have slots. We don't have curfews either. Orange County has both. And there probably isn't a week that goes by that I don't get an email or 2 or 6 about Orange County. It's a hot market for us. So knowing that we can't get slots into Orange County, what do we look at? We're looking at the other airports around there and continue to focus on that. Now, this is near and dear to your heart and to the entire community. I do want you to know that here's yet another set of statistics that we use, whether it's Bowlers or Safari, we go in and show a carrier where all those passengers are coming from and what it means to them. Now, bowling is really important, and honestly, bowling is easier to sell to a carrier than is something like Safari because it lasts multiple months, whereas Safari is just a one-year event. Now, or 1 week event, excuse me. Now, I do want to say, though, that with Safari, we worked with carriers. We went to the carriers, and like over a year in advance. And month by month, we touched bases with the carriers to take a look at what was happening. 4 weeks out, all the carriers were filled to the 45, 46% load factor. What carrier in the world is going to add capacity when they haven't even sold half their plane? Except United. United was filled to 85%. They refused to add any more seats. U.S. Airways did come in with 600 seats. But here again, why United? Because The customers that you were working with obviously had an affiliation with United, code share airline with United, or they were not directed and informed about the other carriers that can get here. So when I've got United filled at 85% and I've got seats going empty because they don't know that they're available, we have a problem. So we need to work together more closely, I think, to educate our customers that come here about ways to get here on all the carriers. Now here's another interesting statistic. And that is, what does our traffic really look like? And this is important because our traffic has really changed. 10 years ago, we probably had 20% local. And today it's over 40. And what that really translates into is business. And so here yet again, we have to get the business community on board to support air service. They have not. We've made, over the years, many, many efforts to go to the largest employers. If we want to grow this community, if we want to bring conventions, if we want to see more air service, we have got to get the business community engaged. Typically, business passengers buy their tickets closer to the departure date, which means they spend more than leisure passengers, than conventioners do. And so this is added revenue to the carriers. So if we can demonstrate to the carriers and provide support from the business community, I think we have a better chance of getting additional air service. Now, what do we really do when we go to a carrier? First of all, we do a lot of research. We use this DOT data. We use this data and do analytics 10 ways to Sunday, I will tell you. And in the process, not only hard data, taking that data and translating it into the potential yields, revenue yields for the carriers, the best time to fly, the best route structure to fly, all of these things that we put into a business case, what we call a route analysis, and we take it to the carriers. Getting into the carriers today, however, requires a relationship. Very, very few airports today are able to get in and make an appointment with the route planners or the schedulers at carriers. Because of the competition, the carriers don't need to meet with you. We're reduced now to 4 major carriers. It's up to them, and they take a very strong position. So we're going to Southwest next week, and I've invited Chris to go with me, and thankfully he's willing to do that. I called the head schedule planner, John Giamata, who I've known forever, said, John, I'm a little concerned about what's going on with Southwest, and I want you personally to look at all of our route performance for all of the Southwest routes. And would you do that? He said, sure. And he called me back about a week later, and he said, Chris, I think we need to meet. And I said, great. So this is how we got this meeting. So we're going to go and we're going to see their route analysis and see from their perspective how we look and why some of the flights are coming down. We'll also see some of the flights that are in jeopardy. And then, of course, we're going to pitch what we can do to help those flights that are in jeopardy. And we'll also pitch the markets that we need, particularly, quite honestly, Southern California, to see if we can get any movement there. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is risk sharing. As recently as 5 or 6 years ago, Southwest would never ask for an incentive. Today, that's the first thing they ask for, along with all the other carriers. So what are we looking at when we're talking about incentives? We're talking about revenue guarantees. We never support revenue guarantees, which means you just give cash to the carrier. Back up, Karen. We never support revenue guarantees. The airport is also limited in terms of what we can legally do. So one of the things we can do is we can waive costs. We can waive airline landing fees. We can waive space rental fees, and we do. So when we have a new market, a new route, we have a policy in place that allows us to do that depending on the size of the market, and we do that. What you need to know is when we waive those fees, we, the airport, have to dip into our savings and pull out that equivalent dollar amount and put it back in the budget, because waiving fees is considered a financial loss, and the other carriers are not going to pick up that financial loss. So the fact is that waiving fees truly costs us something. It isn't just, oh gee, this was revenue we didn't have before and now it's not going to matter. That is not at all the case. We actually have to dip into our coffers and make that up. Community assistance and promotions. This community is fabulous. Whether it's the ski area, the properties, they come to the table with rooms and advertising capability, and so we package that up with fee waivers. We go to the Regional Marketing Committee for marketing support, and once again, the RSCVA and the properties are fabulous in that, as is the ski industry. And there are other things that we do that cost the carrier money, like we will do their technology installation and not charge them. We will work very hard to see if we can acquire equipment for them. If we have equipment that they use, we'll do that. What we're trying to get to is a zero startup cost for the airline as a way to share this risk. And one of the things we don't have that we are now competing against as airports. Airports in this country have states that have economic development departments that provide incentives to air service because they do see it as economic development. We have cities, we have counties who provide that money. That does not happen in Nevada. And because Las Vegas is the name that everybody knows in the world, this state has never needed it. And I have to say we've never asked for it either. But the understanding needs to be clear that we're competing against states that have huge funds set aside just to incentivize carriers. And while we may bring an incentive to the table in a competitive environment, our incentive does not compare to what we're working against. So where does our money come from? And I always like to kind of share this with you to give you kind of a bottom line sense of how we operate. Today, 70% of our financial revenue, which amounts to about $40 million a year, comes from non-airline sources. And this is important because the industry average is 50-50. So if 70% of our if our revenue comes from non-airline sources, that means that the cost to the carriers are lower. So here again, it's another tool that we use as we market to the carriers. And Southwest will be the first one to tell you how important it is. Another tool that we use is focusing on cargo. And you do know that cargo's been growing, and I'll show you some numbers on that. There's a number of things that cargo does for the community. It drives the economic diversity of the community. For example, I was just talking to John Lynan this morning. UPS has identified 6 airports in the country that are focus airports and focus cities for pharma. We're one of the 6 because pharmaceutical distribution out of this community is growing exponentially. UPS has just leased the very last inch of space in our cargo facilities, and they're upgauging the aircraft, and they'll be adding aircraft later this year just to support pharma. So we're seeing this kind of activity, and where we hope to be able to announce as soon as the next 2 weeks a brand new cargo carrier that's coming in with a whole new concept that will continue to drive cargo out of here. But what happens for your interest is that anytime a cargo aircraft lands, it pays landing fees, and it pays the same landing fees as a passenger carrier on a per 1,000-pound basis. But what happens is that that money goes into the same pot, and then it gets credited against the cost of the passenger carriers. So once again, it helps us keep the airline passenger costs down. So what really is going on with cargo? Dramatic. January, I've never seen this before, a 16.5% increase in cargo in January, a 4.4% increase in February, and almost 2% in March. The first quarter was up significantly. It was actually up 7.5% in the first quarter. That's a great sign. I think it speaks exactly what I heard Chris say earlier about the economy rebounding. These are fabulous numbers. And for January cargo to be up when it's always down right following the holidays is an incredible sign, and one that I take to be very hopeful for this community for the future. I would like to just share with you that we recently had the opportunity to work with the university, and we retained the services of the university to do an economic impact study of the airport, and with tremendous results. I think it's really important to know that we are a huge economic contributor to the community, not only in jobs. We have like 265,000 jobs in terms of impact. At the airport alone, there are only over 22,000 jobs, while the Airport Authority directly has 260 employees. When you consider everybody that works at the airport, the airlines, the TSA, the cargo, the rental cars, all of those folks, it's pretty dramatic. In fact, we account for 8.3% of all the jobs in Washoe County. Now, this economic impact study only measured impacts in Washoe County. It did not reach into California because the data was not readily available. But I think this gives you a good sense of the significant economic impact we do create on an annual basis, $2 billion, and on a daily basis, $5.5 million, and every single week, $38 million. But the interesting thing is they actually measured the value of what we might say is Southwest. The 737 aircraft is our key aircraft because it is the Southwest aircraft, and almost $97,000 worth of direct economic impact every time one of those airplanes lands. So working together with the RSCVA, with the properties, with the community, and hopefully soon with the business community, we can continue to generate this kind of economic activity because it's so critical to us, to all of us in the region. So that concludes my presentation, and I really would like to take this opportunity to thank you. Thank you not only for the opportunity to come today to share with you the efforts that we're taking to support you and to support the community. But on a personal note, I want to thank you for your support for the last 15 years. This will probably be my last presentation in front of you. I will soon be leaving this industry, remaining in the community, but leaving the industry. And I've had tremendous support from the RSCVA over the years, and we do work as a partner, and it's important to continue to work as a partner. And I just want to thank you for that ability.
Thank you, Ms. Bart, for that very informative report. I sense that may spur a lot of questions. Are there any questions for the director? May I?
I have one question.
Okay, go ahead.
What does sustainability equate to? You know, earlier on, is it 27 days out of a month's 30 or 31 days? Is it at least, 84%? What equates to sustainability?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
And it was relating to the load factor?
Yes. Well, when you look at the load factors, they're averaged on a monthly basis. And so the fact is, in this market, A, we're a seasonal market, and B, we are a market that has 3 load days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And so those load factors are primarily equating to the other days. The trick is bringing business in those down days to bring the load factors up, because we know that if you want to take an airplane on a Friday, you'd better book far enough in advance. So let's focus on the days that do have seats available, and we'll bring them up. I think that responded to your question.
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to figure out, we don't have sustainability because we haven't met this mark. Is there a this mark?
Well, I think the airlines will look at adding service when they see all their flights at the high 80s load factor.
Okay, high 80s.
So, the Bay Area, when you're looking at 40, in the 40s and low 50s, there's just no way that will ever be sustained. I understand now what you're saying. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Hawkins?
Hi, Ms. Barr. My name is Jerry Hawkins. I had a couple questions. You said that you just leased out the last square inch of cargo freight space, and then you were going to add another carrier. Does that mean an expansion?
Well,
How'd you do that?
the master plan we have has identified the southwest part of the airport for cargo development, and again, it becomes the chicken and the egg. And the airport would not be developing that. That would be something that we'd put out for RFP to a third-party developer. However, before we get there, we would find a number of interim measures to operate, and this is not uncommon. We would close down taxiways to offload and unload cargo. Some of the cargo carriers would share space, you know, and work and operate different hours. Since we're not a hub, and we won't be a cargo hub, there are ways of sharing those cargo gates, you might say, and so we would work with the cargo carriers to do that. So it would be some creative adjustments until the business was significant enough that a third-party developer would come in and say, hey, I really want to build some cargo facilities here. And that's typically what happens.
Okay, and then, you know, I was looking at your presentation, and I didn't hear you address the fact that, you know, the airlines want the seats filled before they'll book the flights, but, you know, and then on the other hand, people don't book flights a month or two in advance. A lot of people travel within 6 or 7 days, and then they book their travel
That's true.
arrangements. And so, you know, I think that's a tough spot. Maybe the airlines need a bigger leap of faith, I don't know, but I also didn't hear you say any statistics for Allegiant Airlines. Are they still here?
Yes, they are.
Okay, I didn't see anything up
Yes.
there.
And there are no statistics for Allegiant because they have just recently started and we have no factual numbers from the DOT yet. The DOT is at a minimum 2 quarters behind, and the Allegiant Airlines has not been here long enough. But I can tell you just by personal observation that those carriers are doing well. Bellingham is selling off the chart. And again, that's your Canadian market.
And then one more, you know, I hear a lot that, you know, the prices have doubled or tripled, and you can't get a nonstop flight to almost anywhere. I mean, there's a few locations, hub cities, but tough to get a nonstop to a lot of locations, and the pricing is just, even in my personal experience, has doubled and tripled over the last couple of years.
And
I
of
mean,
course,
don't the airlines see that as a setback or a step backwards? I mean, how
Not
do
at
they
all.
expect to
With-
book more flights if less people can afford it to less places?
yeah. With the reduction in capacity and the competition, if they don't sell those seats here, they'll take them and sell them someplace else. And so they are not going to, if they can get more money, remember their focus is on ROI, they'll take that plane and drive those fares someplace else. But again, DOT evidence says that, okay, maybe fares are going up all over, but we're still 76 out of the top 100 airports. So while I hear that a lot, I can't control that, but I just know that we're not the most expensive.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilman Dorch.
Yeah, Chris, I know on one of your slides you were showing that, you know, when you're arguing the fact that we've got good service and cheap fares, it's easy to put it up on a slide, but I mean, if you talk to our sales staff, I mean, they're hearing it from everybody they're talking to that it's difficult to get here and the flights are too expensive. And they're not hearing that just from the people that they're trying to sell it to. Those people are hearing it from everybody that they're trying to get here. So how do we overcome that?
Well, obviously, facts speak louder than comments. And, you know, we can have rumors stating all kinds of things. We will help you do a factual analysis between the cost of getting to this market and cost getting to any other market. We have analysts that do that. So if you're going after a big piece of business, we'll do a comparative analysis for you. And hopefully that will help. again, can't control fares, but the fact of the matter is, we are a one-stop market in most cases. And so I think the honesty of saying, hey, look, you can get here in one stop, and we have all the alliances. Even Oakland doesn't have all 3 alliances that we have, which is amazing. You would think so. But we have some advantages, and I think you have to speak to the advantages. And one of those advantages is using us, we'll do an analysis for you and demonstrate what is factual. It's kind of like, you know, we have the new security checkpoint. And there were some hiccups for TSA the first week. I'll be the first to tell you that. And we were apologizing to a lot of travelers. But by the second week, things were smoothing out, and we were still getting complaints. And so the federal security director, every complaint he got about length of time, he went back to the camera and actually timed it. In one case, the lady complained, I stood in line for 36 minutes. She actually stood in line for 6 minutes. And we find more and more that what's happening is a perception issue more than a reality issue. It's kind of like, look at this beautiful community. The perception of this community is we're kind of a low-life community. And the reality is this is a fabulous community. And so how do you overcome the perception? And I think that that is something we have to work hard about. You know, by way of example, in 2 weeks, I'm bringing the largest aviation conference in the world to Reno. We're going to be in your convention center. And this is something I've worked on for 7 years. It's finally happening. And the bookings now are so above the room base and the bookings last year at this time. I am excited. Why did that happen? We, the airport, there wasn't a day that went by that we weren't emailing out to all the members across the country all these great facts about the Reno area and the Reno community. So we worked hard to change the perception, and we have to maybe have a focus group on how do we change the perception of all things related to bringing business here.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may just make a comment. First of all, I want to thank Chris for inviting me to go to Southwest headquarters next week. It's going to be a very, I think, positive experience for all of us and for them to have that kind of dialogue. And I do commend the airport authority for having access to the top carriers. It's very competitive out there, and as Chris noted, if you don't have the relationships, they won't even give you an appointment. And the fact that we get in to see them consistently shows that we are dealing at the proper level and with the ongoing professionalism that allows us access to even tell our story. So thank you for including me.
Thank you.
We work with the airport constantly in so many different platforms. What I want to remind this group about is the Regional Marketing Committee, and a lot of folks kind of vaguely know what it is. That is a consortium of our organization, Carson City, Virginia City, around the lake, everybody who benefits from the air service here. And we have about $450,000 that we've raised this year, and we're spending about $100,000 of it to support the Bellingham air service for the Vancouver market. We just had a meeting on that yesterday afternoon. One of the things we're doing that I think is going to be especially helpful to this discussion is we are going to be commissioning a research study that goes to the top 50 employers in Washoe County, and for the first time ever, ask them, how many people do you have on your team who travel? Where do they go? What is the number 1, 2, 3 markets for you? What is underserved? What service would you like to see added? We don't have that data. Once we have that data, we can use that with carriers. We can use that to go back to them and say, listen, you know, you expect the convention and tourism market to carry the load here. What's the benefit to your business about having better air service to this community? Would you be willing to step up and help us fund some of these marketing campaigns? So it's a first step that's long overdue. Frankly, it's not as far along as I had expected to be at this point. I am the incoming chairman of the Regional Marketing Committee starting July 1st, and we're going to take kind of a look at the way things have been done and maybe see if we can fine-tune it further. The RSCVA donates $150,000 a year traditionally. We've cut that back to $100,000, but that's still twice as much as any other partner. So we still are the biggest fish in that bowl, and we think that there's a lot more that RMC can be doing. It's a good organization now. We think we can make it even better. But it's a typical example of how we interact with the staff, the executive staff at the airport, virtually every week, and work together to try and find the solutions for this very challenging situation.
And I will add, Chris, then you probably are not aware of this, that we did that kind of survey a few years ago and followed that survey up with the airport did, with personal visits to the top employers and try to get commitments. One of the approaches is a travel bank, where those employers that travel a lot will say, we will put in escrow the money that we're going to pay for airline tickets, and we're going to fly X airline, whatever it is, and which is something that a lot of communities do. And airlines are used to this approach, and we couldn't get any support.
And one other positive note is that if we look at the weekdays, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, as we go after more mid-sized conventions, which is our number one priority, 2,000, 3,000 room nights, a very popular arrival departure pattern is in Wednesday, out Friday, but in our western location, a significant number of people have to leave Saturday morning because there's no East Coast service they can capture after their program is over on Friday. So there is a model whereby in Monday, out Wednesday, in Wednesday, out Friday or Saturday, as we get more of these mid-sized conventions where we're getting less of our fair share of, we'll be able to fill a lot of those seats that are less desirable with our current mix of business. So there is hope. Tuesday is probably the toughest. Wednesday and Saturday should improve as our convention volume improves.
Thank you.
Mr. Curtis has a question.
Just a comment. Chris, I just want to thank you for all you've done for this community and for the
Thank you.
airport. You know, I travel around a lot, and from my perspective, this is a great airport.
Thank
It's
you.
convenient, it's well laid out, it's clean, it's easily accessible. You've gone through huge challenges trying to run an airport during a change in an industry that has been cataclysmic. And, you know, we've all got challenges, but you've done a great job, and I really want to thank you for that.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. I've got a great board and a great staff, and, you know, we've worked together, and we're pleased that we're part of this community. And if any of you have not seen our new improvements, give me a call. I'll give you a personal tour.
So I think really the most important thing, and of course, as a convention authority, we're interested, you know, we'd like to have flights from everywhere all the time. And I'd like a Maserati, you know, and there are a lot of other things I'd like too. But the fact of the matter is, we have what we have, and the most important thing is to work together cooperatively. And I thought, to me, the most illuminating slide that you presented was the one relative to Southwest Airlines. And in fact, you know, it dawned on me, you know, when I go to Travelocity or Expedia or any of those other ones that oh yeah, I got to go to Southwest too.
Exactly.
And that's huge. And so it's information like that, I think, and your willingness to go ahead and compare rates and help the RSCVA with the sales team to be able to compare rates. So thank you for the collaboration. Thank you for your efforts. I wish you the best of luck in whatever it is you're going to do.
Thank you.
I'm glad to hear that you're not going to be leaving the territory. So
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Madam Director, I have a question that might be sensitive, but it's a philosophical question, and perhaps as a short timer, you may choose to answer it fully. Your slides up there about the short runs, 250 miles and under, and the other short runs, and the diminution in passengers. I'm not a travel expert, but to me that leads directly to Homeland Security's target hardening of airports. You have a hard target. You know, we're all innocent persons here. We're not the crazies, but we get treated like, you know, you have a common denominator. Everybody has to go through it. Guess what? I'm a consumer over in the Bay Area. I'm going to drive. Okay? Now, perhaps this Convention Visitors Authority can unilaterally disarm and stop marketing to that area, but that would, I don't think that's the answer. I'm talking about the influence of the United States of America on this airport, and how do you rectify that? How do we get some changes?
Well, for those of you that know me, you know I haven't been quiet when it comes to the TSA, and so I am constantly in contact, both locally and in Washington, about treatment of people that I don't appreciate here. All of us, myself, I go through the same thing you do. Nobody is exempt. However, I will say that what I also hear is that our TSA is friendlier than most any other airport people go through, and I hope that continues to be the case. I don't have an answer. The answer lies with the decision makers in Washington. It really does. I will tell you one thing, though, that has, I think, gives you an idea of the kind of effort we've taken. Before we started the project to centralize the security checkpoint, the TSA wanted to put these scanning machines in the airport, these boxes that looked like outdoor porta-johns that showed every part of your body in great detail. And I said, no, you are not putting those in this airport, in this community. I took a lot of heat over that in Washington, but I stood my ground. And so what happened is we built the new checkpoint, which we have. We have all new technology. The scanners only show stick figures. They do not show detailed parts of your body. And today, those machines that they tried to put in our airport, Congress has demanded be pulled out of all airports in the U.S. So to the extent that I can, or that the airport can, we've taken very proactive, aggressive steps to enhance and maintain some elements of customer service. And I think that that's a key element. What you say is true, and you know, we do have Alaska into San Jose. It's doing extremely well. But here again, Alaska has an aircraft the size of which fits the market now. So if we build up more business there, then perhaps we could convince the Southwest to come back into the market. I've been in this business long enough to know that what the airlines do today may be 360 from what they're going to do 3 years from now, you know, their model, their business model. But we have to deal with what we have today. And it's a challenge.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Baum.
Mr. Chairman, just one other comment on that short haul issue. I think the hassles of TSA, we all complain about it, but if the fare is good enough, you're going to fly and put up with it. And I think really it's probably more of a reflection of the economy in recent years, where if you have the option of driving someplace or flying and the tickets are expensive and your budget's tight, you're going to get in the car and load it up and make that trip, even if it's a little longer than you'd prefer. If you're going to New York City or Washington, D.C. or Orlando, you really don't have that option if you're on a West Coast market. So when you have the option of car or plane, fares are a major factor, and you put up with the hassles of flying or perceived hassles. If the fares come down, suddenly that becomes less of an issue because you figure out it's worth paying the fare. So I think that's part of the mix as well. And as the economy's gotten better, I think there probably will be an increased demand for some of the short haul flights over 2 or 3 years ago.
Mr. Curtis.
I have a question, and you probably can't even answer this question, but you know, it's like in my mind all the time as I go through these airports, and I can't help but think about it, and so I'll ask it. And if you can't answer it, all right. But is it helping? I mean, are you catching any bad guys? Is there stuff that you're, you know, you take my Swiss Army knife away about every other time, but, you know.
Can I take the fifth on that one?
Yeah, I figured you would, but I'm telling you, I remember when I saw the 9/11 tower, you know, the Secretary of Transportation, I think it was, walked out the door and she said, well, I think Americans would be willing to suffer some inconvenience for increased safety. Well, you know, I'm just thinking if I was a terrorist, why would I, you know, so is it working? Is it worth it? Is it, I mean, is it just a total waste of money? Is it like, or
Well,
is it a good thing?
You know, I said, can I take the fifth? And I can't give you a direct answer except to say, let's think about the fact that there have been no aviation attacks since TSA happened. Now, don't by any means take this that I'm a big TSA supporter. I have to do what I have to do. But we have to work together, and I think we work together effectively. And by looking at the facts that there have been no aviation hits, something is going well.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Chris for being here today. I wanted Chris to come and share the airline business with the board because that model has changed. It's not the same today as it was 5 years or 10 years ago. And I can tell you that the board at the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority has great confidence in the staff work that's been done in trying to build and maintain relationships. And as Chris quite succinctly pointed out, it's not just about relationships any longer. It may get you in the room to have the conversation, but then you have to deliver the impact of the service that you want and how that's going to reflect in return on investment to the airlines. And I think in many respects, we all have a responsibility to help drive demand as best we can, but the discussion about lift, which we heard from the Safari Group, may have been class seating in disguise, because people were concerned that they couldn't get enough first-class seats, not just into Reno, but from other locations to hubs and into Reno. And that's something that's going on in the industry across the board. If I'm traveling and I try to move up into business class, I've got to schedule myself 3 or 4 months in advance to get that. And as you said, Mr. Hawkins, people don't tend to make those decisions that far in advance. The other thing that I want to say is in regard to security. I've been in airports where I wish that the security had been a bit more strident and directed, because I've seen some characters carrying things onto airplanes, and I mean, I'm not being judgmental about how they looked or how they comported themselves, but I can tell you that I wish that they'd had some security such as we have here at our airport. And I want to reinforce what Chris said about the TSA operation here in Reno. Susan Clark, I believe, was the previous TSA director. She was recognized as having the best TSA operation in the country. That's no small achievement. And Fred Walker, who is the current director, is committed to doing a great job as well. And I've found, again, going in and out of airports around this country and some overseas, that the folks here are very friendly and helpful in trying to get you through there as quickly as they can. And I've not been hassled. They don't know me from Adam when I go through there, but I don't get any hassle. They want to get us in, get us out, because they don't want people standing in line either. So I think it's a very complex business that Chris and the team at the RTAA are running. I think they've done a great job, and I think it's particularly telling when you look at the number of flights that we have in and out of this market, given the population base we have. It's very, very good service. So, Chris, thank you again for coming today and helping
Thank you,
to
Jerry.
understand this operation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you once again. Thank you very much. Let us now proceed. I think I've studied the agenda, and now we've got another bullet point, presentation of findings from the Bay Area Core Market Study.
I'd like to introduce Sarah Labatt from EMC Research, and she's here to present the latest Bay Area awareness study on how our advertisement is being perceived in the Bay Area. We did a thorough presentation to the Marketing and Sales Committee meeting last week or the week before, and she's going to just kind of do an overview and a brief one for the board today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. My name is Sarah Labatt from EMC Research. We've been working with the RSCVA for several years now on both visitor research as well as core market research. So I'm here to show you just an update on your core market research that we do in the Bay Area. A quick reminder, and I'll try to be brief. I realize you have a lot left in your agenda today. The project purpose, evaluate opinions of Reno as a getaway destination among adults in the Bay Area. Quantify awareness of Reno Tahoe USA media campaign and interest in visiting the area, test brand attributes and track them, and measure potential changes of opinions and awareness over time. So really this is a brand-oriented study to understand how your brand is looking to the Bay Area market. Brief note on methodology, and this is the same as we've done the past few surveys. Telephone and web panel survey of Bay Area residents. We did about 1,000 interviews, primarily by web with telephone to supplement some of those populations that are difficult to interview online. Margin of error on this data is plus or minus 3.1 percentage points, and the survey was conducted in February and early March of this year. This tracks results from previous surveys. Our goal is to do this survey every 6 months. We don't always have budget to do so, but when we do the survey. So we've done it in August 2010, February 2011, and August 2012, as well as this most recent survey in February of 2013. Key findings, and then I'll have some slides to sort of show you the data here. First of all, low media spending since August of 2012 appears to be having an effect on the Reno brand, and we think this really demonstrates the effectiveness of investment in media. Awareness of Reno has decreased. The Reno, Nevada brand rating has gone down, and many brand attributes have declined. However, as Bay Area residents start to report increased leisure travel, they also report higher Reno visitation, and 8% consistently mention Reno as a getaway. So even though some of the sort of brand attributes seem to be declining somewhat, we do see in self-reported leisure travel an increase and self-reported visits to Reno an increase. Also among recent visitors, the Reno brand remains strong in association with some positive attributes have grown, and we've seen this before too, that the people that have been here tend to come away with a positive impression. This is data provided by the RSCVA on your advertising spend since 2010 by month. The red stars indicate where we've done research. So you can see there's been a pretty significant up and down in the advertising spend. This most recent survey on the far right, you can see, follows a period of fairly low spend. Our last survey followed a period of much higher spend. So, we do think, and, we didn't do a survey in that big block between 211 and 812. So, we can't really speak to what the line might look like in there, but, advertising spend does affect brand. Reno Tahoe USA has a strong brand rating in the Bay Area. So we did a split sample design where we asked half about Reno, Nevada and half about Reno Tahoe USA. And you see the Reno Tahoe USA brand there on the bottom has a more favorable impression than Reno, Nevada, but we still do see a favorable impression by more than half of Reno, Nevada. The total favorable rating for Reno, Nevada, and this goes back to 2010 and then goes down through the current survey, and you see that the total favorable rating was at its highest measured point last August after the peak in media spending we saw in the prior slides. So, we do see following increased media spending, higher brand ratings, and then as you reduce media spending, we see sort of a return to some of the, sort of lower brand ratings and slightly higher unfavorable ratings. The Reno Tahoe USA brand remains solid overall, but the intensity in that very favorable category has decreased since the last survey. So they have sort of, the Reno Tahoe USA brand has a little bit more sticking power, but we do see some decrease in intensity there as well. Have you heard or read anything lately about Reno? And this goes left to right over time. And you can see for this current survey, 42% say that they've heard or read something lately about Reno, with 8% saying they've heard a lot. This is the lowest we've measured, and recognizing we didn't measure between the middle two bars there. But you see, when you, in a decreased media spending environment, we see a slight drop in the number of people that have heard something recently. You may recall we did a market segmentation for you when we first started this research, and so we split your market here into core visitors, the people that are coming now, your target, which is people that maybe aren't coming frequently or haven't been in a while, and then other is sort of everyone that doesn't really show an inclination to visit. And you see that the biggest drop in having heard or read something lately about Reno is among the target market. We worked hard with the marketing department to really help develop that target and understand who to target with a campaign. And you see that it was an effective targeting. And when you decrease the spend, you see the decrease, especially in that target. When we ask people who said they've heard something about Reno lately, what have you heard or read? And a couple, this is an open-ended question. They can write anything they'd like, and we see a couple things to note. People saying it's fun or a great place to go is on the increase. So people who have heard something, they've heard a sort of general message about it's fun, a good getaway, good to visit. And we see a decrease in the number of people specifically mentioning advertisements, TV ads, and billboards. Where have you heard or read about Reno lately? This really hasn't changed over time. You see word of mouth, friends and family, on the internet, and television as your top three ways to hear about the destination. Do you agree or disagree? Reno is a place I want to visit. The most recent data is there at the bottom, and you see very little change in this question. 15% strongly agree and 45% somewhat agree, as compared to 17 and 46 in the prior survey. So we do still have a very consistent number of people saying they would like to visit Reno. We asked a series of attributes and asked if you agree or disagree that Reno is a good value, is fun, is unpretentious, etc. So there's 2 slides of this, and then the top to bottom goes first to most recent survey. And there's not really a change here in the order of these attributes. You know, a slight decrease we see in this most recent survey, and all of them really just, you know, less top of mind, less advertising translates to people being a little less able to attribute these attributes to the destination. But we don't see a real shift in the order of the attributes. This is a continuation of the same set of questions. So you see is relaxing, casinos I like, wide variety of activities is something we added more recently, and I know it's a focus for you on marketing, and I think it's a good one, and we've looked more closely since last week's meeting at sort of what are the attributes that drive desire to visit, and we really see sort of some of these top slide ones: fun, good value, easy, activities I like, relaxing. These are some of the attributes that are sort of not only people believe they describe Reno, they're most highly correlated with desire to visit and actual visitation. A quick set of slides here on differences in the attributes since the last survey. So these are the same attributes, and we're looking at the net shift from does describe to does not describe. So you see the 2 brand ratings on the left. So the Reno, Nevada brand rating went down a net 9 points, whereas the Reno Tahoe brand rating stayed about the same, a slight increase of 2 points. And then you see the attributes sorted in order of percent that believe it describes Reno. And you see really no change in those top attributes on the first slide: a place I want to visit, good value, fun, unpretentious, easy, activities I like. These are attributes that people value about Reno and the people that come like, and we see they're remaining reasonably stable even given a lower spend. We see some of these other maybe more specific attributes do have some drops, more specifics about activities, events I like, is relaxing, is unique, has a lot to do. So, we do see, again, as we did with the brand, some decrease in ability to ascribe attributes to the destination. We added, the pink is the target market. Again, people we think are sort of the next candidates to come or to come more frequently. And we see a pretty similar pattern here with a drop in the brand rating and a drop in some of these key attributes, especially the activity-oriented attributes. And finally, we added among people who have visited Reno in the last 2 years. So the blue is those people. And what we see here with people that have visited recently, the brand ratings have remained stable, and we see some pretty large increases in some of those attributes. So, and I know we've seen this and talked about this before, that when people experience now's Reno, the Reno of now, they like it and they come away with a positive impression. It's about getting some of those target visitors in the door to get those positive impressions that they do get when they come to the destination. Self-reported travel is up slightly compared to August and nearly identical to February 2011. So this is just personal, non-business travel in the last 12 months. We see 28% say they've spent more than 20 nights away from home on personal travel in the last 12 months as compared to 25% in the last survey. So just a slight increase in that personal travel number. And when you think about getaways or short trips, what places come to mind? An open-ended question, they can say or type whatever they want. And we see consistent Reno, 8% mention Reno. This is a multiple response question, so they can sort of say as many destinations as they like. And Reno gets a very consistent number. Lake Tahoe also very consistent at 24%. And then you see other destinations, really not a lot of differences in the order of these destinations on this question. A slight increase here also in self-reported Reno visitation. At the bottom set of bars is Reno, and the very bottom is this most recent survey. 35% say they visited in the last 2 years, as compared with 32% in August of 2012. Lake Tahoe, you see a small decline, sort of going all the way back to 2010, and a consistent level from 2012 to 2013 in the number that have visited in the last 2 years. About 3 in 10 spent at least one night in Reno in the past 2 years. This is, again, self-reported in the Bay Area. And we see that 7% say they've spent 6 or more nights, 23% have spent 1 to 5 nights, 4% say they've visited but not overnight. So we see actually, a slight increase in the frequency of visitation and a slight increase in visitation as a self-reported number. Compared to August 2012, more report staying in a gaming property in their last visit. So you see 213 there at the bottom. 71% gave us some sort of gaming property. And that's a collapsed number of all the properties that were listed. And so you see 43% say they've stayed in a downtown Reno gaming property in their last visit, 24% in a suburban gaming location, 3% in a gaming Sparks location, 1% in a Lake Tahoe gaming location. So we do see 71% total for this survey as compared to 66% in the prior survey. We see a slight sort of decrease in the number of people saying they never gamble outside of California. I think, we've talked a lot about this question, and I'm sure you all know that it's hard for people to answer it very honestly, but I think we do see, some slight increase in self-reporting of out-of-state gaming, whereas in-state California gaming seems to be fairly stable. And finally, this is just a summary slide of all of the sort of key brand metrics that we asked about. So this data you've already kind of seen in detail, and this kind of gives you a dashboard of understanding what does the brand look like going back to when we started these surveys. Remember, we did a fairly long pause in the middle, and so we don't really know that that line is a straight line. It could not. It probably isn't a straight line. But you see the favorable rating for Reno Tahoe in green at 76% in this study. You see the favorable rating for Reno, Nevada in sort of that brown color at 63% in this study. 60% in the red agree they want to visit Reno. 42% say they've heard something about Reno. And 35% say they've visited Reno in the past 2 years. So we do see self-reported visitation increasing. We do see some drops in some of the brand rating questions in the past few months. So conclusions, briefly, based on tracking data to date, it appears higher media spending does have a positive impact on brand ratings, and lower media spending can lead to decreases in ratings and awareness. It's not that we're seeing skyrocketing negatives, but rather just a decrease in awareness. It's not as, they haven't heard as much recently. Media spending has dropped to similar levels in the past without long-term negative effects, and trends indicate that increased spending in the future may help improve awareness of Reno and reverse a decline in brand ratings. So we do see the relationship goes both ways, and it's not that now that it's dropping, it can never come back. Increased spending leads to increased brand. We do see some bright spots here in this data. Self-reported visitation has increased slightly as people also report overall leisure travel increases. So, we do see some positive trends there. 8% continue to mention Reno as a getaway destination, and opinions of recent visitors on the brand remain steady and increases in some of those brand attributes. The destination does have a favorable impression when they come. That's just a reference slide, so that's my conclusion. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Ms. Carano.
I'm not sure, thank you. I'm not sure if it was this organization or the other one. When we discussed how you actually get this data, the majority of it is from the web, and then you have 200 phone calls. How does that compare the demographics of those people that are actually answering to the demographics of the typical Reno Lake Tahoe visitor? I'm thinking it might be skewed a little bit.
This study is designed to measure the opinion in the core Bay Area market. So the demographics in this study do reflect the demographics of 21 and up people that live in the Bay Area. We also do the visitor profile study. We're doing it this year, and we're starting the second quarter. We do a monthly survey of visitors to Reno, to your market online, and that's a different population because it's people from all over the country. It's a national study, and we look at visitors to the area. So you're right that this population is not of your visitors. We do have some visitors in it, but this is really looking at that Bay Area market overall to understand what does the Reno brand look like there.
Okay, I understand. So 21 and up, but do you have the breakdown of the demographics of who actually answered?
Yes. Yeah, I don't have it on a slide here. This is a summary, but we can certainly provide that, and Jennifer
So
has
thinking-
all of the...
I'm thinking that it's going to be a younger demographic than who's actually visiting. So it's going to,
That's true.
is this valid information then? I think it's good information, but is it?
I mean, maybe Jennifer or Chris might want to speak to this, but this survey is designed to show you what the core Bay Area potential and actual visitor looks like, as opposed to the visitor survey, which looks more specifically at the people who are actually coming in and visiting the market, and that demographic does match what you're saying about, an older demographic and the demographic that visits.
Well, we've had all the PR. What amazes me is that they haven't heard as much about Reno. And maybe all those articles that we've been getting and accolades isn't reaching these people, or is it just a different?
Well, a couple things. First of all, it's a very busy marketplace out there, and a couple of great articles are good. What this proves, as we discussed at Marketing and Sales Committee, is that marketing works. You spend a lot of money with an effective campaign, people react differently. You don't spend much money, which historically we have our up and down because of our budget levels. We think that spending heavily during the prime season is the way to go when you have limited dollars. That obviously does get results. I think also too, as you look at our messaging now, we're talking about all seasons, 1,000 reasons. We're talking about activities, special events. That tends to skew younger than our traditional gaming guest who's come here for many years and sits at the slot machines and does the traditional model of this destination. So if this research skews younger, I think our messaging skews younger, and it is very much relevant because we need more of those younger, upscale, active people to replace the older generation. And as we know, millennials, they may enjoy gaming as a lark, but it may not be their primary focus. So, when I first got here, I know there were some issues about the age of the research and whatever. Modifications were made to the methodology to get that more in line with our real customer going forward. We also, I'm very adamant about this, I want the research done on a consistent basis. I don't want these big gaps or inconsistencies. Every 6 months you take a snapshot, you've got sort of peak and lower season. You should see some real trends there that you can then make some analysis from. So I think we've addressed the age issue. I think too, once again, as I say, our new messaging is very much in line with a slightly younger demographic, and so this is very relevant to reaching the audience that is the future of this destination.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I believe that would now take us to item 7, D&E, and actual consent. So, not anticipating any questions on D&E, but not hearing any, may we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Dortch, second by Ms. Cooney. Any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And now, Mr. President, we're 2 hours in. Let's prioritize. One person is left. We're going to lose a quorum. What's the important stuff we got to deal with so that we can deal with it based on people departing?
Well, I think the proposed budget is probably the most important thing remaining.
Okay. Sounds, I'm a conservative guy. It sounds like it makes sense to me. That would probably be the most important.
Mr. Chairman, I think there's a brief item that we want to make sure gets addressed that perhaps we can handle and then move into the budget, and that is our proposal for the Reno Air Race sponsorship.
Okay.
Since Mr. Houghton is here and we've had this discussion, and we discussed this at the Marketing and Sales Committee recently. We lost our quorum there, but there was agreement from the remaining members on this issue, and we wanted to bring it to the full board because it's we think it makes sense and would like to have your vote on it. As you may recall, we had approved $199,000 dispersed amongst...
Let's just announce we're on item H. so that Charlotte can keep her head straight when we do minutes. Item H, go.
We went through our normal process this year very fluidly and smoothly and allocated the $199,000 to a number of special events that we think warranted our support as sponsors. As part of that process, I had recommended to the board that we carve out the National Championship air races. Obviously, it's the 50th anniversary year. They're in a rebuilding mode, and we wanted to look at this as a special case because we didn't feel it was fair to limit the funds available for other worthy smaller events in light of the current unique status of the air races. So that was agreed upon. I subsequently had a private meeting with the president and CEO, Mike Houghton. We discussed their situation. He advised me that the insurance costs as a result of his efforts have come down from last year's very high numbers. He also advised me that Breitling has stepped up and has doubled their financial commitment as a corporate sponsor, and that things are generally looking more positive than they were a year ago. We had a conversation. His request initially was for $150,000, which is comparable to what this organization ended up providing in two different allocations last year. I advised him that probably wasn't going to be possible based on our budget restrictions, and indicated that I was going to be proposing to this board a $75,000 sponsorship for 2013. And this will be an August event, so it will fall in the 13-14 budget. But that is our recommendation, and as I indicated, we did not have a quorum at marketing sales, but there was general discussion and I think agreement by the members who remained on this recommendation.
All right. Is there a desire by Mr. Houghton to make a presentation or to stand for questions? All right. Any member wish to pose questions to the Air Races Director? Mr. Hawkins.
Mr. Houghton, can you tell us what kind of a decrease you saw in the insurance? I think last year it was a $2 million fee, if I'm not mistaken. What did it end up being this year?
Significant decline, but not as much as I would like. We got it down 750,000, so we're looking at 1.25.
Okay.
So it's sizable, and it's heading in the right direction.
Okay. I think that's the only question I had.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of Mr. Houghton? Ms. Carano.
What is our sponsorship package as a result of $75,000? Do we have?
We'll work that out. We have such a long-standing relationship that we've always been pleased with the sponsorship. You know, we'll have signage, we'll have our vehicle up there, we'll have a lot of access for customer entertaining, et cetera. We'll work out the specific details of that now that we are making this proposal. But since it's such a long-standing relationship, we haven't put that to paper yet.
Mr. Hall.
What is it? Was there a total amount, or was there an amount included in the 199,000 that was allocated, or is the total going to be 75?
No, our previous conversation was to carve out the air races as a separate and unique situation. So there was no funding from the 199 for the air races. We barely had enough to do all the other good events that were new or evolving that we felt required some financial support. So we felt this was a fair way to go, given the unique circumstances.
Jennifer.
I was just going to mention, with your approval, it is laid into our 13-14 budget. So we have carved money out for it, should you approve us to move forward.
Any other questions, discussion? Ms. Cooney.
Oh, I just wanted to say I think it's really important for this group to continue to support the National Championship Air Races. It's a premier event, and we appreciate all the effort that's been put forward from the community to make this event move forward. And with that, I would like to motion to approve the $75,000.
Second. Second.
There's a motion by Ms. Cooney and a second. I saw Cindy Carano as coming in under the wire as a second. But let the record show that nearly the entire board wished to second the motion. Any discussion of that motion? Let me, under discussion, let me ask, this is a legacy event. It's very important. I think we're happy to support them. What possibilities are there to find the other 75 in our budget later on as we draw closer to the event?
Well, it's important to note that last year, we were in at 75, and then as things became more difficult to balance the budget, both the Nevada Commission on Tourism stepped up, and then we also stepped up and doubled our commitment at the RSCVA. So the 75 is a more traditional level for us. That was somewhat unique last year to help out. Knowing the challenges of our budget right now, I think it's difficult for us to find any additional monies. This is putting a bit of a stretch on us and requiring us to carve some things out that were other options for the funds. So I think 75 is where we would recommend we stay.
I could say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to place pressure on you, but, you know, that wouldn't be exactly correct. It's an important event. Okay. Any other discussion, Mr. Hawkins?
Yeah, I think I did see 10,000 you could get from something you didn't have to pay the Safari Club for meeting fee. See a $10,000 meeting fee down in the approved budget. It won't have to be paid. It might be 10,000 of it.
Is that styled as a motion to amend the motion? No? Okay. The tone of my remarks is can we find money additionally as we draw closer to the event? And you've bookmarked one, perhaps. All right. Any other discussion? We have a motion on the floor. Hearing no further discussion of the motion, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much, sir. Then, under the prioritization budget would be item G.
Yes, I'm going to ask Mr. Rivers to present our proposed budget for fiscal 13-14.
Thank you. This was run through the Finance Committee 2 weeks ago and received support. There was one requested amendment that is not included in the presentation today, which is to fund roughly $110,000 or 0.5% of the room tax that comes in as a capital reserve. So we are working through making that change, and Mr. Hawkins picked up on part of the funding source for that of the $10,000 that was included for Safari. We're also looking at making a few other tweaks to it, but what you see before you today is 95% complete. We will come back through with the final budget in May. Just a reminder, next month's meeting is a week early, as required by NRS, so it will be May 16th, I believe. Is that correct, Charlotte? At 9 o'clock, we'll have the public hearing for the budget. And with that, please stop me if you have any questions, but I'm going to run through the preliminary budget we have in front of us.
Let us check. Any questions so far? You are good.
All right.
Please continue.
To start off, we have the revenues. So this is compared, 4 years of actual are on all these worksheets. So we're looking back 4 years of true actual results for the authority, compared to the budget and what we consider the outlook, which is our revised rolling forecast for this year, as well as the budget for 13-14 with the dollar increase and percentage increase year over year. So starting with the revenues, you'll see room taxes are up slightly, about 0.7%. Facility revenues are almost exactly flat compared to the outlook, and we have a significant decrease in other income. That's driven by the decreased interest that we'll receive as a result of closing out our guaranteed investment contract this year. To drill into that a little bit, on the room tax side, we are forecasting a 0.5% increase in cash occupied rooms year over year. We also are projecting that the average rate actually works out to be exactly flat year over year. We didn't plan that, it just kind of worked out that way. The components of that, obviously we don't have Safari Club next year, which is going to be a significant hit in January, but we do continue to have both bowling groups year over year. So up until July of 14, we will have bowling groups in, and then in the following year, we'll go back to our normal cycle of only having one at a time. But year over year, that's what we're looking at. That represents essentially about a 2.5% growth in the transient base year over year to get to that projected revenue level. We've also adjusted for any groups that John has in. Obviously, the convention cycle goes up and down. We lose some in some months, pick up in others. And just a reminder, in the current fiscal year, we should have a tremendous June. We have both bowling groups, and we have a very large volleyball group in June. So we're projecting about an 18% growth year over year. As Chris mentioned earlier, January of this year, we were up 50% year over year. February was about 7%, and we just closed out March at almost 18% year over year. So it's been a phenomenal first quarter. We hope to see that continue. A lot of that has been driven by rate, and part of this budget includes rates going up slightly on the base. Again, if we could get $1 a night from the hotels, it works out to about $250,000 a year to us, and that would push the rate to a whopping $74 a night from $73. On the facility side, you'll see a decrease at the convention center. That's primarily driven by Safari Club not being here this year, or in the budget year, I should say, as well as concessions to Barrett Jackson to attract them for Hot August nights. The other facilities show slight increases due to show schedules and just projected growth in facility rents and other ancillary revenues. But all in all, it works out to about a $40,000 decrease from the current year. Again, on other income, most of the revenue centers work out to be relatively flat. We show the big decrease in investment income as a result of the termination of that investment contract. And then on the operating expenses, all said and done, year over year works out to a $300,000 decrease to the outlook. Again, the outlook, if you look at it, shows slight increases in spend that were approved by the board with some of the ancillary dollars that we picked up, additional funding to the air races that wasn't in the original budget, as well as some shifting. You'll see decreases in special projects, which is primarily driven by site fee payments being less than anticipated to the bowling groups. But all in all, payroll and related is down. That's driven by, some of it is driven up because our PERS rate, which is our retirement system, actually is going up 2%. So that's laid in, and then the rest of the decrease is related to needs for show schedules and staffing to service those needs. Supplies and service, there's a large decrease. That's again driven by Safari Club. We do have to pay for the tent when they're here, and that's about a $300,000 hit. That's the vast majority of that decrease. Travel is up a little bit, with John anticipating being fully staffed and being on the road a little bit more, and increased costs of traveling. Promotions essentially flat, and special projects is up a little bit. Those are where we show our payments for special events and largely our payments to USBC for site fees. With that, all said and done, works out to, again, about a $300,000 decrease, 1% year over year to the outlook. And then capital and other. This is where there are some changes. In the debt service, we hit our peak of $9.5 million. Again, with the bond refinancing we did a couple of years ago, that stays flat through 2032 now. So that number won't change year over year, at least to a significant nature. Grants is up a little bit. That's driven by room taxes, primarily generated up at Incline, that get rebated back to them. And then the big decrease here is in capital improvements. We have $200,000 laid into the budget. $100,000 at this point is earmarked for the convention center. Another $100,000 is earmarked for the livestock event center. When this comes back, we will also show the reserve in that amount, so that number will go up a little bit compared to what's in here today. And we're actually working through our insurance costs now, but we have a very good feeling that that number will be decreased year over year. We've gotten some pretty good direction that our insurance renewal should be in good shape, and that again will come back to the Finance Committee in May and to the full board for approval on our health and insurance rates.
Is it decreased?
Yes. With that, all in, operating or non-operating expenses are down slightly again. And then the next few slides really relate to the marketing and sales, essentially again being flat when you look at total expenses. General and administrative expenses are down. That's largely driven by the rent in the office building that will take hold starting November 1. And then another trend going back again, showing the facilities in the other, all said and done, works out to the $400,000 we're showing in total expenses. And then I think the slide that best illustrates what's actually going on is this is the margin. So this is the net performance, net of any revenues that come in by facility or in sales and marketing. So you'll see facilities net actually is about projected to be about $230,000 better than the outlook. Sales and marketing, $30,000 difference. G&A, $90,000 difference net. Again, that's largely driven by the rent. Capital is down significantly with the guaranteed investment contract coming up. Slight increase in room taxes gets us to essentially balanced budget at the end of the day. Again, we do need to make those few tweaks that were requested at finance and a few things that have come up subsequent to our initial presentation for this. And as Mr. Hawkins noted, there's also, oops, I don't know what happened to that slide. There's the non-routine expense slide is attached as well. That is what we've been presenting monthly under the president's report, and has the large items or items that are not frequent. Again, the Safari Club is one of which that will be coming out of that. That's about $10,000 that we'll use to fund other items. And we will clean up the capital reserve. We're going to fine tune the insurance, and there's just a few other minor tweaks to it. But with that, we would submit the tentative budget for 2013-14.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Mr. Rivers? First hand I saw was Mr. Hawkins.
What do we have for total incentives to the Barrett-Jackson folks for that package to get him here?
Well, we're providing a lot of space for free, so there's not a cash incentive there.
Meaning directly out of the budget that you have the budget for?
Yeah, we have a marketing fee. This is the fee that I had mentioned previously was presented to me just before Christmas as being an obligation, and I had to scramble to come up with it, and I advised the board how we were going to put that together. We've gotten an initial payment from the state of, Brian, what was our initial payment? Was it 10,000? I think it was just.
I think it was 10.
9,500, 10,000 from available funds this year. And I've made a presentation to NCOT, and as a travel commissioner, I had to recuse myself from the vote, but going forward, we're asking for some additional funds for them in support of this, and we got universal support on the first amount from this year's budget. This event obviously happens in August, which is our next fiscal year. We also have an existing media buy in San Francisco for our consumer campaign, and of that, 60,000 was carved out of billboards for Barrett-Jackson's messaging. So within the format of our ad campaign, there'll be a Barrett-Jackson message. So we thought that was a creative way to give them something that's very beneficial to them, and they're the #1 market for here. And they agreed. So 60 of the 200 is from that. As I said, 10 has already come from NCOT. We're asking for another 50 from NCOT. I also went back to Hot August Nights and said, you guys have no skin in the game here. We understand now that you've negotiated part of the take of the door ticket sales, and we want to share in that. And their board did a meeting and universally supported that concept. So 50% of their share of the door comes back to us. And then we have some dollars allocated in the fiscal 13-14 marketing budget for the balance. So it's cobbled together with very little pain from both our internal programs and from NCOT. But we would expect that full 200,000 to be covered that way, and that's our only real financial cost going forward in exchange for millions of dollars of TV coverage, which we've all discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. Question.
How does that fit into the budget? I assume that it's in the outlook when these pop up that are non-budgeted expenses are a little more expensive than what you anticipated, whatever. How do you handle these ones?
These, again, are essentially for 2013-14, so they are all included in the budget. The ones that come forward monthly, there are adds, drops, changes. Some amounts go up, some go down, some get added to it due to shifting of funds. But these are amounts that are funded and allocated within the 13-14 budget in front of you today. Oh, I'm sorry.
In other words, the 12-13 non-routine expenses that we receive, by way of example, in January of 13 was 900,000. It was budgeted to be 600,000, extra 300 grand. And you go down the list, and some are budgeted, yes or no. Some are not. So where does that money come from if it's not in the budget? And I assume once you've spent it, then it'll go into the outlook and you'll be able to figure it out. But
correct. Essentially, it's in the rolling picture that we present as the outlook every month. So to the extent that the bowling went down, the 300,000, that's used for other purposes within the budget. Okay. So whether that be room tax decreases, facility revenues being down, additional sales or marketing programs, it all